and command, no, all the data that you have uploaded, they will list it out for you. And another console will be a window for your graph. If you run it, you ask to print a graph from R. Okay, so later on we'll look into that. Okay, so in SAS, the editor window is to enter, edit, and submit SAS program. Okay, the editor windows is where you put in all your codes. All right, you can, whether it's SAS or SPSS, a little bit different. Whether it's SAS or R, okay, so you will, it 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 works like you put in a code, an instruction to the computer, and then you run it. So the computer will process that command. Okay, this is where you put in your code. It can be one line command where you have all your codes in one line. So it works that way. Okay, or you want to run multiple function. Okay, like you want to get the data, you want to clean up the data, then you run some of the command or function. So you can put in multiple lines. This is where you can put on all your lines, and you can modify it later, because we don't want to just if you put your code in the console, it will be operating like one line at a time. Later on I'll show you. And there is another window that you can put all the lines and try to run it one by one and see if there are any mistakes in your command. Okay, because computer is very accurate. Okay, very accurate, which is good. Okay, they will never do mistakes except if your command is wrong, and they are very sensitive. Even even one capital letter compared to you use a small letter, the command will be not rejected. They will give you, they will tell you that your something is wrong with your command or your code. Okay, computer is very sensitive, right? So even one comma or one whatever's different in the spelling, whatever, they cannot run, or they cannot they cannot run that command just by a very simple mistake. So they are very sensitive, very specific. Okay, so this is where you can compile all your commands that you want to run for one project. You can do that. Okay, so line by line you can check and see if there are any mistakes in your codes. Okay, so that it's safe there, and then you can modify or do correction from time to time. Okay, so these are all the windows in SAS. Okay, they have log window. In log window, they tell you what have you done before, what kind of command that you put in and run. So all the log is in here. The output is where window to display the output from the execution of the program that you run. Probably, for example, you run an ANOVA test. Okay, so in this window, the output window is where the ANOVA table will come out. Okay, the output of your program or your execution of the SAS program. So in the Explorer window, you can view and manage your SAS file and create shortcuts to files. So this is if you have never been using SAS or R, this won't mean so much to you. So later on, you have to go and try the software and look at all these windows, so you will understand more on what are these windows function are. Okay, so the SAS program, it has a built-in programs known as SAS procedures. Okay, this is the basic one. In the SAS program, it is built in for these procedures. Okay, and only 2 steps of this program. Okay, 2 steps. The first one is data step, and the second one is proc step. Okay, don't worry, you don't have to memorize that. So data step is where you create, read, modify, you download the data. This is where you want to put in the data into the system. If you want to SAS to process the data for you, whether an ANOVA or whatever statistical analysis that you want to do, you have to put in the data first, right? So imagine that SAS is a kind of a factory, or maybe a human, or no, some organism, probably. Okay, so you have to tell this machine or this program, okay, this is my data, and you have to put it somewhere in that factory. Okay, so they have a whole system that will have what we call as memory. Okay, but they are not they have a exclusive memory for the SAS. Not you have your system Windows, or maybe your Mac or whatever. So there is a standalone program where they have their own memory, they have their own brain. So you have to tell the machine, okay, this is my data set. Okay, in some kind of specific way of telling the machine. Later on, we'll look at that. Okay, so this is where you prepare your data, put in the data. Okay, for SAS, okay, input list the variables. Input, okay, all those bold procedure or instruction or bold words. For example, this data input, that is actually a instruction to the computer. So when you want to put in your data, you tell the computer, okay, computer, you put in data here, the bold one, data what? All right, so data, you tell what are you putting in. So means that data is a function telling the computer, hey computer, this is my data. All right, so data and something, that is the command, data something. It means that you are telling the computer, this is my data. Okay, and then what's next? That is input. You have to tell computer will get the data matrix. Okay, the data matrix, that like what we have discussed before. Using Excel, you have columns. All the columns is for variables, right? ID, body weight, initial body weight, and another body weight on protein content or whatever. So all those columns are for each variables. All right, so whatever it is, so you have to tell the computer, now data, this is my data. You give the computer the data matrix. Okay, you have columns and rows, right? So each of the column is variables. So you have to tell the computer, that is my data matrix, and what is that for? So you put in input. Input is an instruction. Okay, all those bolded font is actually a real command or real instruction for the SAS. So you tell input, my data that I gave you just now is actually for the first column is for what? ID, let's say. Input, and then first column is ID, and then space, another column is whatever variables that you have in your data matrix, and so on. All right, so variable names must be a single word. Okay, maksudnya katakan in the second column is actually initial body weight. All right, initial body weight. There's actually, if you put in initial body weight, SAS will recognize that as three variables. Three variables: initial, body, weight. Oh, so how are you going to do that? How are you going to make it as a single word? You can put in as initial body weight without any space, or an initial underscore body underscore weight. So that is a single word. For SAS, or any other computer program, usually, okay, they will consider as two entity if you have space between them. So the key point is that remove the space with whatever sign that you want to put in, as long as it's like is joined together, right? So like initial body weight, put it as together, no space within between them, or probably initial underscore body underscore weight, so that there is no space. So that's why you see many of the, if you do computer programming, most of the programmers love to use underscore, so they can differentiate the word, the characters with underscore, but no space between all of those words, right? So it became a single word. This is very important, okay, or else the program will recognize it as three variables. All right, so it must be um, tally with your data matrix. Let's say if your first column is ID, second column is weight, third column is height. So you should put in input space ID space weight space height. So it must, the sequence must be similar to the data matrix that you're using. Must be similar. So the computer will understand that, okay, the first row is ID, second row is the weight, third row is the height. Okay. Um, and okay, this is also very important. Alphanumeric variables are identified as a dollar sign after the variable name. Let's say you most of the variables that we are interested in are measurements, numerical, right? But some of the variable, for example, ID, if you have name for your cows, all right, as an ID, like Timah, Jemah, whatever it is, all right? So that variable name, remember the input, so that ID, you have to put